All right. I'm going to talk about the lathe. So the lathe basically is a tool that spins wood or other materials like foam, and you use really big chisels, basically that are different shapes. So you take these chisels and you're going to hold it on this tool rest as it spins. So what I'm going to do is do a real quick demo using foam. Foam's really light. It's easy to tool and machine, and I'll be able to make something on the lathe really, really fast. It's the same process if it's wood. It's just that if it's wood, you need to, handle things a little slower, right? So, first thing I need to do before I even do anything with the lathe is that I need to be able to find the center when this spins, right? When it spins, I want to be on the center. So, if I start with a square piece of wood or foam, the easiest thing to do is to just take a square, right? And draw an X in the middle, right? If I draw an X in the middle, then I'm totally going to have the center. So it's pretty important to do this on both sides because we're going to put it between here and there, right? So I need to know where the center is on both sides. Boom. And there. Now the other thing I want to do is if I have this square and I start to spin it on here, and let's say it was wood, then when I hit these corners, it's really going to chuck, 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 right? It's really going to hurt. So what I want to do is just knock down some of the corners, right? I want to make it so that this is more like maybe like an octagon rather than a square, so that it's closer to round, so that when I start, it'll be easy. Now this is foam, so it'll be very forgiving, but if it's wood, there's tools that I could use that'll make it easier, like using the bandsaw or the table saw to knock these corners off. So I'm going to saw these and then come right back. All right, so when I go to stick my foam on the machine, I'm going to put it between here and here, right? So I need to take the stick, I'm going to put it, there's a hole back here, and basically you have to tap it to push this through, right? It gets really pushed in there. So sometimes you need to use a hammer to give it a little tap, right, to push it through, but you don't need to pound it like crazy. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, I'm going to bring it onto my foam. If it's foam, it's going to be super easy, right? All I got to do is basically line this. Has, you can see it's got like a cross in it. So it's super easy in foam to just push it in, right? But if it was wood, I would need to tap this down. Tap, not beat it down. Because if this starts to mushroom out, it will no longer fit in there. So once I have that in, I'm going to put it in. Then I can slide this end stock tool over, right? This is the tool rest. I can slide this around. It just moves around. I'm trying to do all this one-handed, so it's not working. And then I just want to make sure that I'm lined up on the center. I'm going to move the camera in closer so you can see that is on the center and the center. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, sorry about that. I'm going to show you the handles here. So there's a handle right here that locks this, right? So I'm going to push it there. It's going to lock. There's one right here. And what this does is lock this, the chuck. I can turn in this tailstock. And so if it's unlocked, it should be unlocked, it's going to start pushing in some material. I don't know if you can see that or not, but as I crank it, it's going to push into it, right? And so now it's pushing the entire thing, squeezing it together, right? So now it's spinning as a unit. Now, if this is wood, you have to be a little more hard with it, right? So I'm going to move the camera here so you can see. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the tool rest. I'm going to position it so it's as close as I can get it without hitting, right? So I kind of see this as maybe my weird biggest spot. So I'm going to go there. The other thing I want to do is I want to raise it. So I'm about halfway, maybe even a little more than halfway. So why it's important to have it here and a little higher is if I take a tool, if I have a tool and it's spinning really fast, and let's pretend this is like a really hard wood and it catches, right? If this has a big gap, it catches and I'm like this, whack, right in the face, totally hurts. So if I'm on the upward end of that spin, it's less likely to get caught. And also, if I am as close as I can get reasonably, right? So I'm going to turn on the lathe. So there's a switch right here that just turns on the power. It should always start, there's forward and reverse. Start in neutral. So it turns on. This tells me how fast it's going to go. Right now it's going to be 0 because I'm not in forward or reverse. You always want it forward, which means it's coming towards you. So if something happened, it would fly away from you. So if I was doing it in reverse, it'd be going like this. If something happened, it would fly into my face potentially. So when you start out, you always want to start really slow, like maybe at most like 300 or 400. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this. This is the cutting edge right here. So the bigger end, you can see it's kind of shiny. I'm going to rest it on the tool, and I'm just going to push it into the foam. Now, since foam is so soft, I'm actually going to increase the speed. So as I start to remove a lot of material, I'm going to need to readjust my tool rest, right? Oh, there we go. So it started to stick, and because it's foam, it, oh, I forgot to lock that. But since it's foam, what it does is it'll easily begin to slip on there. So it's already started to round out. I'm going to go ahead and round this out and then, excuse me, and then come back. All right, so I'm back. I got it nice and rounded out. I used what's called a gouge. So this just takes out a lot of material, right? So as it's going, you just, come on, start up. It's just taking out a lot of material. So you notice as I get it rounder, I can start going much faster. So we have the gouge. We have, I can't remember the name of the one you start with. There's a parting tool, a skew, and a V tool. So the V tool, it'll just make a V, right? So that makes V's. The skew tool, there's different sizes of this, but it's basically the straight that's on an angle. So I can either come in and make sort of V's. I can do it flat. You can sort of turn it as you're doing it and try and make different shapes. And then there's a parting tool, which is if I go to cut this, I wouldn't want to have to saw through this big thick piece. So I can hold it. You don't hold it like this. You hold it down, and it just cuts grooves that you then stick a saw in, right? So you always want to think about where your connection is, because you don't want to hit the metal on metal, right? So once you have your whatever you're working on mostly finished as far as the size goes, the next thing you can do is sand it. So sanding on the lathe is very easy. Like all other sanding, you want to go from coarse to fine. So you want to go from a lower number like 80 or 40 up to like 220 is fine. But when we get on the lathe, you even start dealing with higher numbers like thousands. So you can definitely turn up the speed a lot more. And all you do is just hold it in. So I'm going to sand just this one part here. Now, because this is foam, I'm actually able to manipulate the shape more than if this was wood. So if I sand this and then I stop it, and see if you can see the difference yet. So can you see how this is smooth and this is still very rough? So sanding is about the last thing. You can also, if it's wood, when it's on here, you can finish it, right? So you can put some sort of wax or polish on it, nothing that you would spray or anything like that. So that's the basics of the lathe. There's a lot more to this. People get very creative, make bowls and all sorts of beautiful objects. You're free to explore that, but this is about my extent of knowledge on it.